Hello everyone and welcome back to English with Kayleigh. In today's video we're going to analyse The Horses by Ted Hughes. It's a longer poem, so get your copy of the poem, get a few highlighters ready, and let's do a stanza by stanza analysis together. So just before we get into it, I do have resources for teaching and studying Ted Hughes, including this PowerPoint that I'm about to walk you through. You can gain access to that on my test page or my Teachers Pay Teachers page, and the links will be in the description below. So as always, we'll read through the poem together, we'll do a short summary, in this case a slightly longer one, then we'll discuss the themes, we'll do our stanza by stanza analysis, but most importantly at the end I give you a practice essay question that will help you to kind of think about some of the things you may be asked in the exam, and then you can leave your comments down below, share your ideas with other people, and I'll be sure to respond and kind of point you in the right direction. So let's read through The Horses. I climbed through woods in the hour before dawn dark, evil air of frost making stillness. Not a leaf, not a bird, a world cast in frost. I came out above the wood where my breath left torturous statues in the iron light. But the valleys were draining the darkness, till the moorline, blackening dregs of the brightening grey, halved the sky ahead. And I saw the horses. Huge in the dense grey, 10 together, megalith, still. They breathed, making no move, with draped manes and tilted hind hooves, making no sound. I passed. Not one snorted or jerked its head, grey silent fragments of a grey still world. I listened in emptiness on the moor ridge. The curlew's tear turned its edge on the silence. Slowly detailed leafed from the darkness. Then the sun, orange, red erupted. Silently and splitting to its core, tore and flung cloud, shook the gulf open, showed blue, and the big planets hanging. I turned, stumbling in a fever of a dream, down towards the dark woods from the kindling tops, and came to the horses. There still they stood, but now steaming and glistening under the flow of light. Their draped stone manes, their tilted hind hooves, stirring under a thaw while all around them the frost showed its fires. But still they made no sound, not one snorted or stamped, their hung heads patient as the horizons. High over valleys in the red levelling rays. In din of the crowded streets, going among the years, the faces. May I still meet my memory in so lonely a place, between the streams and the red clouds, hearing curlews, hearing the horizons endure. Okay, so that is The Horses, one of the longer ones in the GCSE selection for 2023 onwards. So a slightly longer summary to get through. So we start with the speaker is climbing the hill in darkness. The atmosphere, from the offset, the atmosphere seems quite ominous, and there's this icy stillness around the speaker. The speaker's alone and they feel as if everything surrounding them is frozen solid. Even the speaker's breath creates these fog clouds in the cold grey light. As the speaker climbs the mountain, they see the sky split in half as darkness lifts towards the morning sun. And it's in this moment that the speaker spots the long-awaited title animal, spots the horses. There are 10 of them. They stand perfectly still like statues in movement and colour, and their manes of hair flow, and their back hooves are resting at an angle, and they remain still as the speaker passes. They're almost given this ghost-like quality in how tranquil and still they are. The speaker listens for a sound whilst looking at the land below the hill, and that's when we hear this bird, a curlew, cry out, and they interrupt the silence. And it's after this moment that the world starts to come to life in the morning, as the speaker describes the sun as it burns away the clouds and it reveals the blue skies. And upon seeing this beautiful sunrise, the speaker then returns towards the dark trees and approaches the horses once more. So we really see a journey here of the speaker approaching the horses, going up to the top of the mountain, witnessing this amazing sunrise, and then that return journey and how things have changed, or importantly, how things have not changed. So they remain motionless, the horses, and their bodies reflect the sun's light. Their manes and their back legs seem to have thawed in the morning sun, as they're described, but are still stone-like. And they remain very calm and still as the sun ascends into the sky. And then finally, when the speaker thinks about their return to the hustle and bustle of the city streets, they comment that they hope to remember this moment, a place of complete isolation, listening to the sounds of the birds and the silence of the endless, unchanged horizon. Okay, so in terms of themes, there are two main themes that we see in the horses. The first one being the stability and beauty of nature. If we consider the horses to be a symbol of that unchanged stability that nature provides, we'll lend ourselves to a deeper layered analysis. And also, whilst it's only brought up in the final two stanzas, it's very important to consider the idea of rural silence versus urban noise in that moment, and how the speaker hopes to remember it when they're back in the city. So there are 19 stanzas to the horses, so I'm just going to split them into groups for us to look at. So let's start with stanzas 1 to 4. We'll talk about the highlighted sections in a little while. So let's just take a look at the very first line. I climb through woods in the hour before dawn dark. So from the offset, this blunt alliteration here, with the D and the dawn dark sound, it's quite a heavy sound, and it seems very laboured, and this could reflect that difficult climb that the speaker is enduring and is going on. Evil air, a frost-making stillness, not a leaf, not a bird, a world cast in frost. Powerful imagery throughout the poem, but here particularly we get this sense of the cold and the darkness. And this is actually something a person may initially fear. So that's why I said in the summary and in the overall summary that it does seem ominous at this point. We have a lot of vocabulary, a lot of words that lend itself to something that could be feared. This evil air, a world cast in frost. But as it turns out, as the speaker journeys through the woods, the atmosphere changes within the poem. Not a leaf, not a bird. So we've got this anaphora here, not a, just emphasizing how still and silent nature is. And we have a world cast in frost. We get the sense that the world is almost a statue which has been coated in this icy layer. Very impactful, especially when we consider that's how we later see the horses as well, which just allows us to to suggest that the horses are that symbol of nature itself. So we have a caesura here, a world cast in frost, and that caesura just really evokes that frosty stillness that's been described in the first two stanzas. After the caesura is when we see a change in the story itself, in the poem. I came out above the woods. So you get this sense of this kind of clarity and this moment of stepping out of the darkness. And this is emphasized here by this enjambment, that physical movement of the speaker ascending. So when my breath left tortuous statues in the iron light, but the valleys were draining the darkness, till the moorline blackening dregs of the brightening grey. So here we do see a change in the atmosphere once the speaker emerges. So it moves from this more ominous atmosphere and tone. Think about those words we've seen: evil, a world cast in frost, torturous, that's the one highlighted in blue, and how it then moves to something which is lighter. It gives us a sense of clarity. Those are highlighted in yellow: light, draining the darkness, brightening, it halved the sky. There's a different sense there. Till the moorline. Now, moorline is a kind of, I would say it's a key word in Hughes's works, and this is where you want to show your AO1, your understanding. Hughes grew up exploring the moors. He lived in the valleys of England, and his love of nature. Um, that relationship that he has with nature, and in his writing he often gives nature, I mean, of course nature has a will of its own. It's that thing that remains unchanged. So it's important to focus in on that particular word as well, to show that you don't just have that surface level analysis. Okay, so then we have quite a lot of plosive B and D sounds in stanzas 3 and 4. That plosive B and D of the blackening dregs, of the brightening grey, the draining the darkness. It adds a sense of drama and intensity to the scene as the darkness lifts, all leading to that climax and the crescendo of that beautiful, beautiful sunrise. And finally, after waiting for so long, right at the end of stanza 4, we're finally introduced to the horses, and I saw the horses. It's said very nonchalantly at this point, very matter of fact. However, the symbolism and the meaning that it takes on later on in the poem shows how impactful the moment was. So stanzas 5 to 8 then. So we see the horses here, they are described as still, silent, almost colourless in their physical appearance, possibly sleeping. But as I said earlier, we get that almost ghost-like sense, okay, with the colours, grey silent fragments of a grey still world. In it, still, silent, and the colour, they don't seem to be of colour yet. So megalith. So we get this powerful imagery of these huge monuments, that are to be worshipped, just because of their size and importance. They breathed, making no move, with draped manes and tilted hind hooves, making no sound. We'll go back to that particular stanza later on because it is repeated with just that one change of draped stone manes, showing that permanence of it and how they do remain unchanged. But the last stanzas, the end of stanza 7 and that standalone line in stanza 8, grey silent fragments of a grey still world. So this metaphor and the poem as a whole, but this particular metaphor uses the horses as a symbol of the steadfastness and stability of nature, and also of its indifference of the humans that inhabit it. It prevails over human humankind, and human nature. And very much like the pre-dawn day, they are silent, unmoving, and grey. So again, we've got that similarity in the description of the horses and the world at that time, again showing that link between the two. 10 together, making no move, and hind hooves. So alliteration is used throughout these stanzas here, and it does create this lyrical, harmonious description of the horses in nature. Okay, and then we move on to stanzas 9 and 12. So let's just take a look at the first sentence. I listened in emptiness on the moor ridge. So we just here get that moment for the speaker where they stop and they take in the silence around them. So we've seen them climbing, we've seen them with this very physical challenge before them, and finally we get a moment where they stop and they take in the silence. And whilst taking in the silence, they hear the curlew's sound break through. Okay, so the curlews. Now, this is what is interesting. This is a pun on the word tear or tear, depending on how you read it. If it's a tear, we get the sense of a cry, so a sense of sadness. However, if it was a tear, we get the sense of the sound tearing through the silence, quite a violent act. So there's two different ways of reading that particular word choice. But what's very interesting is that this is about the halfway mark of the poem, and it's here after we hear this bird's cry that the world begins to wake. And just a quick note is that a curlew is very common in northern England, and people do say that the sound it has is quite sad. So that will support the idea of a cry from the bird. Slowly detail leafed from the darkness. So we get this sense now of the wonder and the awe of nature from the speaker in how the world around him is changing, however, yet still remains unchanged. It has that cycle, which is unchanged. Then the sun, orange, red, red, erupted, and that word choice there really emphasizes the climax of the moment. So it's that beauty and the power of the natural world, and also the surprise of the speaker in witnessing this moment and how it changes them. And that's reflected in that enjambment. Red, red erupted silently and splitting to its core, tore and flung. This repetition of red, red, just emphasizing and reflecting the intensity of the colors in that view that lies before the speaker. It shook the gulf open. Now, what's very interesting is that from the beginning, we've had this kind of an ominous feeling to the poem. And here that continues. We see this vague sense of danger, in tearing something to the core and shaking the gulf open. But these here are used as dramatic verbs to depict the rising sun to the reader. These dramatic verbs are used to emphasize the beauty and the magnitude of the sunrise and what it does for the speaker. And that's what we're going to talk about now. There seems to be something so profound that it seems to have shook the speaker to their core, and highlighting that this is a moment to remember nature's beauty, but also its potentially violent and unknowable power. That's something that is always kind of in the background for us, especially when things happen in the world, when we see these natural disasters, it does have the potential to be incredibly violent. But this moment of witnessing nature at its most beautiful really seems to have shaken the speaker. Something so profound has happened for them. And of course, we do see this internal rhyme in the core and toe. And again, that internal rhyme, it does add intensity and drama to the moment. But of course, also something of beauty when we see that harmony. So even when the context and the words may have that vague sense of danger, the musicality of it shows that it's something that is beautiful as well. And finally, at the end of the stanza, a very short, the shortest sentence within the entire poem, I turned. And we don't only see that physical movement, but that emotional journey as well for the speaker as they now bear witness this beautiful sunrise, and they turn, and now they're going to head back down towards the dark woods, and we know that they are going to approach the horses once more. So stanzas 13 to 16, it starts with the speaker stumbling in a fever of a dream. And there really seems here to have been a change in the subconscious of the speaker, with that connotation of the dream, the unconscious mind. They move down towards the horses once more. And when they see the horses, they are described again. There, still they stood. So again, for the most part, they are unchanged. And we've got this pun again on the word still. So this could either mean without motion, so highlighting that how even as the world moves around them, they remain without motion, they don't move, or still meaning the same as before. But here we get the sense of the things that have changed slightly for them, now steaming and glistening under the flow of light. So the frost here thaws, so that ominous feeling slowly melts away. It thaws under the sunlight. And again, this is just that subtle hint at the power of nature, especially when we consider the imagery of the fires as well. While all around them, the frost showed its fires. So that power of nature and that, the heat that has been created from the sunlight. Their drapestone manes, their tilted hind hoofs, but still they made no sound, not one snorted or stamped. So again, going back to that repetition of the previous lines highlights how the horses remain, for the most part, very much unchanged. And that's what we can use there as that metaphor for stability of nature. Okay. And we move to the last stanza. I think what's very important to mention at this point is that when you're analysing poetry, one of the most common pieces of feedback or comments that we see from examiners is that people analyse the first part of the poem very much in depth, and they either run out of time or forget to analyze the last parts. Don't do that. Make sure that you are commenting on all parts of the poem, because in effect it's a story. Especially with this particular poem, it's that journey, and you need to comment on it. So let's look at the last three stanzas, then we'll talk about form, meter and rhyme, but don't forget, then we'll discuss an essay question as well. So we move to their hung heads patient as the horizons, and this just implying that, like the horizons, they continue in this very much undisturbed cycle, very much unchanged, which again just highlights nature's enduring power and beauty. In the red leveling rays, I think the word leveling is very important here, because leveling gives us a sense of balance. So here we see the balance and harmony of the natural world. And the last two stanzas are incredibly important, because it's actually one of the main themes that's discussed throughout the poem. However, it's not explicitly mentioned until the very end. We see this imagined return to urban life. And the speaker says, "May I still meet my memory in so lonely a place." So the wish and almost the necessity of remembering this moment of peace, of clarity, of awe, of wonder, and of stillness and calm, which is something that I think a lot of people, all of us, can forget in our day-to-day lives. And that is emphasized by this alliteration of the M sound. It's almost like a soft humming, like a calming sense of meditation for the mind, which is what that speaker has experienced in viewing the sunrise. Between the steams and the red clouds, hearing curlews, hearing the horizons endure. And I think this is where we get the speaker admitting that they wish that they themselves could be like the horses, patient and at peace with the world around them. So even when they hear the curlews cry and the sound tear through, that the speaker themselves in daily life can remain calm and at peace. Okay, so let's take a look at the form, the meter, and the rhyme before we take a look at the essay question. So the form, it's written in free verse, but it has, it's written in couplets. In writing it in such a way, it appears much longer on the page, which allows Hughes to stretch out the descriptions and creates these blank spaces that reflect the isolation and silence of the world before morning, before the sunrise. The meter, it doesn't follow any particular meter, but the poem's pace feels very meditative and intimate, because we, as a reader, we gain insight into the speaker's mind and their own journey, and that realization of that peace, clarity, and calm that comes from that, from the moments appreciating nature. Rhyme, there are moments of rhyme. We spoke about the core and tour, and that really helps to create that moment of intensity of the beauty of the sunrise. But again, by not having a set rhyme scheme, it allows the poem to be more intimate and unpredictable as we gain insight into the speaker's mindset. Okay, so the essay question I'm going to leave you with for the horses is, how does Hughes reflect the beauty of nature in the horses? So I'm really excited to see what ideas you share in the comment section below. I'm always replying to messages and engaging, so please do share your thoughts and feelings on this poem, and if you were writing an essay, what would you be sure to include? And we'll have a good chat about it. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope these videos help. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more English literature analysis, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye guys.